started in the Air Force at Wright-Patterson, and was in the Air Force for 2 years and stayed an additional 6 years working in research. And then I returned to McDonnell Douglas and stayed there for 30 years, and finally ended up at Parks College again as an endowed chair.
And at McDonnell Douglas, what was your work there?
It involved a lot of high-speed work, hypersonics. We worked on things that flew from Mach 4 to Mach 12. We had some airplanes that flew Mach 12 all the way around the world. Probably more than half of my career, I was in projects that were classified or compartmentalized. In quantum physics and zero-point energy, that's a possibility. But literally, Sakharov and a number of people that were working on it, I think, are very, very convincing arguments that the fabric of space is like an ocean, an energy ocean, in which solid energy is floating on it, and solid energy is the mass. And in fact, everything goes back to Heaviside equations, and it's waves, not particles. And the quantum is now not mass, but time. If you mention quantum physics, or wormholes are the type of things we know now, because if you went to CERN and talked to the particle physicists, they would tell you certainly some of this was possible, because they see it all the time. You know, when we talk about zero-point energy, what that means is that when everything comes down to rest, there's still energy left. And there is a constant flow of energy between matter and antimatter as it annihilates itself and recreates itself. It occurs in stars. All of these big star factories you see now with Hubble is a continual exchange of energy. You know, there are people who've been experimenting with zero-point energy or try to tap zero-point energy for years. Every once in a while someone will do it accidentally. They'll call it cold fusion, but I don't think it's cold fusion. I just think it's a zero-point energy tap. Except for 3 people that I know, no one has been able to control it. That a friend of mine actually visited in Ann Arbor, Michigan, that was, I consider, a mathematical genius that actually figured out a way to control it. He was so paranoid, left his wife and children and went in hiding, because he was terrified that someone would kill him for the knowledge that he had, the ability to tap this whenever he chose to and control it. What do you think would happen if you introduced an ability to tap? Zero-point energy represents about 40 to 50 megawatts of power per cubic inch of space. That's a lot of power. And if you could tap it at will, then no one would have to sell gasoline or oil anymore. You would just tap into this. One guy in Ann Arbor, Michigan had one running in his basement, not connected to any power source whatsoever, sitting in the middle of a table, and it had been running for a year. The history of the world has been that the wrong individual getting that information can use it for a lot of destructive things. Not everyone would use it for the betterment. Almost anything you can think of can be turned around to be used as a weapon. And when you get into these kind of energy-time transitions, it's what Tom Bearden says, that they could be used to just wipe out whole segments of the population in the Earth, as well as they could be made to liberate us from all dependence on fossil fuels. I think it's like a lot of things, the people that, if there are a group of people in the world that have access to it, I don't think they know how to let go of it because they're afraid who's going to get their hands on it. Even though there'd be tremendous benefit to mankind in getting us energy sources that we wouldn't have the problems we have with today. If I were to look at, since my first introduction to UFOs as a young lieutenant to today, I would say you have to look at, first of all, I believe there's a large number of covert projects that go on in the United States that none of us are ever aware of. So I think maybe a large fraction of those are covert projects that we're doing or someone's doing that are earthbound and human beings. There's this hardcore 10, 15% or 20% that don't fit any explanation other than the fact that the individuals, the beings that are in them and came here by way of a